Breaking news, you are looking at live pictures out of Phoenix, Arizona. Protesters waiting to greet President Trump when he arrives for a campaign rally there tonight. Trump hoping to begin to turn things around after his much criticized response to Charlottesville. But a leading member of Congress now pushing to remove Trump from office, in part because of his response to Charlottesville. Democratic Congresswoman Jackie Speier becoming the first member of Congress to say that Trump should be removed through a never-before-invoked section of the 25th Amendment. It lets the vice president and a majority of the cabinet declare him, quote, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. She recently tweeted, quote, POTUS is showing signs of erratic behavior and mental instability that place the country in grave danger. Time to invoke the 25th Amendment. And Congresswoman Speier is joining me now. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Jim.
So explain to us, our audience, what exactly are you basing this on? What specific examples can you cite as evidence that the president is not stable enough to fulfill his job?
Well, there's actually a growing mountain of evidence that the president has been very erratic, has shown a mental instability. It was crystallized last week with the combination of his comments about fire and fury that he offered up against Kim Jong-un in North Korea and how we would take him out, followed by his back and forth on Charlottesville and how he really became almost abusive in calling people out when he was really telling from his soul what he thought about the Charlottesville incident. And I think the combination of those, coupled with the fact that there has been a lot of people behind the scenes talking about his instability in Congress for some time now. If you go back in time like 6 years and watch interviews that he gave then, where he could put a whole sentence together, but now tends to put a few words together and then goes off into another sentence unrelated to the first. It is an indication to me that there is some trouble there that is more than just a one-off. And I'm concerned for the American people. I'm concerned about him having his finger on the button that could send nuclear warheads around the world.
But let me ask you this, because some of this can be attributed to perhaps a distasteful personality or a style that some would find distasteful, but the standard of mental instability or an incapacity to carry out the duties of office, that's quite a high standard to meet.
Well, first of all, it has been invoked before. George W. Bush, it was put in place when he had a colonoscopy during his presidency, and then, he reestablished his presidency after the test was done.
That was temporary as opposed to a continuing inability to do the job.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting that it's really in the court of the vice president and the majority of those members of the cabinet to make that determination at this point, whether or not that incapacity is preventing him from doing his job.
You mentioned there some of the requirements to meet the standards set by the 25th Amendment. Just in brief, we'll lay them out because our audience may not be aware, but you need the vice president and, as you say, a majority of the president's cabinet. Of course, he appointed his cabinet secretaries, so you have that, or Congress or a body appointed by Congress. And then at a later stage, to make this permanent, if the president were to protest, you would need a vote of 2/3 in both the Senate and the House. You have a Republican vice president, of course, in Mike Pence, who's been very supportive of the president throughout. The president would have appointed his cabinet secretaries, so folks that he picked for the job, and you still have a majority in both the Senate and the House. Do you see those as hurdles that practically could be met to reach the standards of the 25th?
I think that the ball is in the court of the vice president and the members of the cabinet. Clearly, the Congress is not going to move on the 25th Amendment or impeachment. The numbers aren't there. And meanwhile, we are hearing members on both sides of the aisle talking with great consternation about the instability of the President of the United States. At some point, we've got to stop whispering about this and talking about it in terms that we can all understand. I mean, if the emperor has no clothes, then it's time for not just a child to speak up. It's time for members of Congress who serve on behalf of the American people to speak up.
Congresswoman Speier, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.